Hello. Welcome to another Bible Story Children's Time. Today is Wednesday, and we are in the midst of telling about one of the great stories in the Old Testament. Because we're talking about the book of Exodus and the story that is told in the book of Exodus. And Exodus comes from, the word Exodus is a Greek word, and it means to leave or to get the heck out of Dodge. And it has to do with the struggle that Moses went through against Pharaoh to get the people of Israel out of bondage in Egypt and on their way to the promised land in Canaan. So, when we left you last time, Moses had confronted Pharaoh, and as a way to show him that he meant business, as a way to show him that God was, all powerful, God had instructed Moses to have Aaron wave his staff over the Nile. Actually, no, that's wrong. Take a container of water out of the Nile and pour it into the dirt. I got ahead of myself here. Pour it into the dirt where it became blood. And then soon the entire Nile River, the canals to the river, the ponds nearby, everything was blood. Or like blood, at least, is red. And not appetizing. And this went on for quite a while before Pharaoh just said, "No, I'm not going to let you go. Face it." So Moses goes to Pharaoh again. Time to ratchet things up. And he says, "This is what the Lord says. Let my people go so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will plague your whole country with frogs." Now, if you're thinking reasonably, it might occur to you that a plague of frogs, noisy, might not be that bad. And the way we think of it as, oh, hey, all of a sudden there's a lot of frogs around, not a big deal. But just imagine this was throughout all of Egypt. And just imagine what would happen if you go down to the lake or you go down to a river and you just start to see frogs coming out, and they just keep coming out. It would be kind of freaky. Imagine you are a housewife in the land of Egypt. And this afflicted only the Egyptians, by the way. Hebrew people, wasn't bothering them. But you're at home, it's morning time, it's time to make some bread, and you reach up on the shelf, and you're going to get the bowl down, and you're going to make some bread, and you're going to knead the dough, and all of a sudden you reach in, and there's a frog in your bowl. Not just a frog, there's a bunch of frogs in your bowl. And all of a sudden bread isn't looking very good anymore. So you look to see what kind of vegetables you have, and frogs in there too. And these guys get to be really, really annoying. The frogs last for days. Finally, Pharaoh says, "All right," calls Moses to him. He says, "All right, Moses, let's reach a deal. You get rid of the frogs, I will let your people go into the wilderness." to worship God. You go first. So Moses, as promised, as his deal was, he relays that to God. God causes all of the frogs in Egypt to die, or at least the ones that were part of the plague. I don't know if there was, a natural population that didn't die or not, but all of these frogs are dying. And you have to imagine this as a householder in Egypt, that all of these frogs that were crawling around in your food and on your kitchen cupboards and on your floor and in your bed and all that, they don't go away, they die. So there's this massive cleanup effort. And the frogs are just stacked up in piles where they rot and start to smell. And you can kind of get a feel for what that would have been like. And then as that is going on, Pharaoh was looking at this and says, This is just wrong. That anyone would do this to us, that anyone would disrespect me in this way is just wrong. So any deal I make with Moses, with this God of his, I made that under duress, so guess what? I don't have to follow it. And he doesn't let the people go. So, what happens next? God's not happy. Moses, not happy. So God tells Moses what to do. Moses tells his brother Aaron. Aaron takes his staff and he goes out and he strikes the ground. And what should appear but lice? Lice come out and they start infesting all of the people, all of the animals. You can imagine them crawling around on the mounds and piles of dead frogs. And as the book of Exodus tells us, all throughout the land of Egypt were lice, as plentiful as the dust. Well, again, back and forth with Moses. Pharaoh will do or say anything to get it to stop. And they make the lice go away finally. And then Pharaoh once again says, no, this is bogus. We're not letting the people of Israel go. So God already has a game plan lined up. So when Pharaoh backs out, God turns to Moses and says, all right, next thing, again, with the staff. And now where there had been flies, or had been lice, little tiny bugs, now there are flies. Swarms and swarms of big flies, swarming around people, swarming around the livestock. Just awful. It's like, mosquito season here, except they're bigger, they're flies, and there's more of them. And then that plague gets ratcheted up. And there's a pestilence that's released on the livestock. There's a sickness that affects all of the different types of livestock in Egypt. The cattle, the sheep, the horses, the donkeys, they all start to get sick. And that's not enough. Pharaoh's heart is so hardened that he refuses to let the people go. And then God says to Moses and Aaron, take handfuls of soot from a furnace and have Moses toss it into the air in the presence of Pharaoh. It will become a fine dust over the whole land of Egypt, and festering boils will break out upon the men and animals throughout the land. And we can assume, possibly incorrectly, we can guess, let's say, that it probably wasn't just the men either, but the men were what was important, so they would get mentioned. So there's this plague of festering boils that infects all the Egyptians and their animals. And they're scratching and they're oozing and it's infected and it's just miserable. And Pharaoh sits, he's scratching himself. And he's thinking, well, at least it can't get any worse. Yeah, it can't. Because when that doesn't work, God causes a thunderstorm of hail and fire to fall on the land throughout all of Egypt. It was the worst storm they had ever seen. And Pharaoh looked out upon it and said, okay, I guess it could get worse. But now it's as bad as it can be. Right? No. There's one more small plague after this, and it's a plague of locusts. Swarms of locusts sweep over Egypt, eating everything in their path. And Pharaoh still has a heart so hard that he will not relent and let the people of Israel go. And then God says to Moses, stretch out your hand toward the sky, and darkness will spread across Egypt, a darkness that can be felt. And Moses did that, and darkness descended upon the land of Egypt. It was a total darkness. You know the can't see your hand in front of your face thing? It was like that. If you've ever been to a cave and had them turn out the lights on you, it's like that. Total and complete darkness. So nobody could leave their home, nobody could do anything for 3 days. Now here, if that 3 days sounds familiar, it might be foreshadowing the 3 days from Good Friday to Easter Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It could be a call ahead to that. Or that weekend from Good Friday to Easter Sunday could be a call back to this plague that happened just before freedom was attained. So either way, there's probably a relationship between the two. Just kind of a side thing. And even that doesn't work. When the darkness finally lifts, Pharaoh is mad as a wet hen, and he will not let the people go. Excuse me, allergies. So when he won't let the people go, there's one final plague that God is going to visit upon the Egyptians. And this is a nasty one. All the others, increasingly nasty as they went along. But they were building up to this. God says, or said, that he would smite every family in Egypt with the death of their firstborn. This would be a totally devastating attack, a totally devastating plague that would happen if Pharaoh did not relent. And Pharaoh did not. And so, the last plague was unleashed on Egypt. But we're out of time. So we will hear about that last plague and what God did to help the Hebrews prepare for it. And what happened afterwards. We'll learn that tomorrow. In the meantime, have a great evening. Stay healthy. Stay cool. We'll see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock.